10th, 2022 school committee meeting to order. Our first order of business is a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our second order of business, unfortunately, is a moment of silence for an educator who spent much of her career in the Walpole Public Schools, and after retiring was a wonderful volunteer here in our community. If we could have a moment of silence for Ms. Lois Jennings, who dedicated many years to the Fisher School. Thank you very much. Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Walpole School Committee. This meeting is the time when the committee conducts its business and observers are always welcome. The school committee is a policy-setting body. Because education is a state function, once school committee members are elected to office, they become officers of the state. Locally, the school committee is a legislative body responsible for establishing local policy, for seeing that schools are properly run in accordance with state laws and regulations. Copies of the policy manual are available on the district website or in the superintendent's office. The committee hires an administrative staff to oversee all of the daily operations of the schools and to do the staff work necessary for the committee, both to act on policy matters and to evaluate, in the general sense, the overall function of our school system. Thus, the committee asked the administrative staff to do a variety of tasks involving data collection and analysis and to make recommendations where appropriate. In many instances, the law requires that the superintendent, from a superintendent recommendation upon which the committee can act. This is an official business meeting of the school committee, conducted under a prepared and limited agenda, distributed to the committee, posted at the town hall and school offices in advance of this meeting. This is not a public hearing. From time to time, the committee holds public hearings in which presentations are made and public comments are invited. Following is a policy from the committee with respect to public participation during our school committee meetings. All official meetings of the school committee, except executive sessions, shall be open to the public, and opportunities shall be offered for members of the public to present statements at regular sessions. Time will be provided for public presentation and citizens' comments as stated on the agenda. Participants may present written, oral statements or requests. The committee would appreciate receiving copies of any written statements. These statements or requests must be limited to 3 minutes. Unless an answer or question is provided in the committee's written policies or is an established regulation, the committee will not respond to the request at the same meeting, nor will it take action on a proposed recommendation, but shall defer to an item to a later meeting. The committee suggests some guidelines that may be helpful. Each person wishing to speak should limit their remarks to 3 minutes. If there are many citizens desiring to speak on the same subject, they will be asked to limit their presentation so that each different subject may be given fair representation and time. Citizens should not expect any immediate reply from the committee, since this is the time for citizens' comments to be heard and not the time for decisions to be made. If the committee feels there is need to discuss the citizens' matter of interest further, it may place the matter of the agenda for a future meeting. The committee appreciates your assistance in helping it discharge its duties properly. The committee would appreciate any comments relative to possible improvements. We will have citizens' comments at the end of this, our agenda for this evening. Our next order of business is the Walpole High School student report. We have Mr. Colin Mahoney. Mr. Mahoney, take it away.
Good evening. I'm Colin Mahoney, and I am a sophomore at the high school. Term 2 report cards were released last week, and Term 3 has begun, and we are into the second half of our year. This past Tuesday began the COVID testing program. Students who opted in were given their first set of home antigen tests. They will administer the self-test Tuesday evening for this week, and Monday evenings going forward. Tests will be given out to students every other Monday during lunch in the main lobby. All positive results must be reported to the school nurse immediately. Tonight, the guidance department is back to holding an in-person junior family night. All juniors and their parents and guardians are invited to hear the college admissions panel presentation. It begins at 7 p.m. The mock trial team finished its season this week. The young team found success and is hopeful to get back in the real courtroom next year. The Speech and Debate Club had the students participate in the NSDA qualifiers this weekend, and the PM Club is headed tomorrow night to tour Fenway Park. As winter sports are nearing the end of their seasons, senior nights are underway to thank our seniors for their participation and leadership on our sports teams. Last week, the girls hockey team had their annual ALS awareness game to benefit for You I Will Fight. Tomorrow night, the boys hockey team will host their second annual boys hockey pre-prom showcase fashion show. And it will be held at the Italian American Club, and it begins at 7 p.m. That's all for this evening. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Questions or comments for Mr. Mahoney? Seeing none? We really appreciate it, Brendan.
Thank you.
Very good. Moving on to new business, special education update. Chair will call on Dr. John Quealy and Dr. Goff for a special education update.
Sure. Dr. Quealy is just going to present and give an overview of our special education, including our programs, because I think throughout the years, people who have been, lived in Walpole for many years know our programs and what they entail. But I think for people being new to town or wondering what the programs are at the 3 levels, it was great to have Dr. Quealy here to explain that.
Thank you. So about this time each year, this committee invites me in for an update, so as Dr. Goff had just mentioned. Mary, are you moving slides from there, or you want me to do it from here?
Mary, could we please have the agenda? It's on the table there. Sure. Yes, please, thank you.
So this discussion is broken up into really 3 different parts. The first is going to be the review of the programs that we have here in district. The second part that I have for you tonight is an update on professional development that we've done specifically in the area of special ed this year. And the third part, I'm going to talk a little bit about the review that's underway right now in the middle school level. I do have a couple of added slides that I've added to the presentation that probably aren't in your packet, and that's due to some information that we got from DESE, that Dr. Goff and I got from DESE this week that I wanted to make you aware of. I think it's positive, so I wanted to put it into the presentation for you tonight. All right, so but before I go into the programs, I wanted to give you guys just a couple of numbers, and I think I do this each time that I come and visit you. So on February 2nd, my office did a data grab looking at all the students in special education in the district. So I wanted to tell you the total number of students with active IEPs as of February 2nd was 601. That percentage within the district of the total population is about 16%, roughly. The current state average for Massachusetts is 19%, so we're a little bit below the state average. The total number of students that we have in out-of-district placements right now is 40, and that's about 1% of the total population of the district. And these are students that we're fiscally responsible for. The district also monitors several students who live at the Home for Little Wanderers. These students we are not fiscally responsible for, so I didn't add them into the 40 number. But they are students that we follow on a day-to-day basis in terms of their programming because they do live in the district, even though their tuitions are paid for by their home districts. And this is in accordance with foster care laws set out by the Every Student Succeeds Act. So those are just some basic numbers that I like to give, I think, each time that I visit with you on this topic. All right, so the in-district programs, I'm going to start with the Daniel Feeney Preschool. And I think I do this because I'm not sure everyone realizes that the preschool is a special ed program by definition. Its mission is to service children ages 3 through 5 years old with disabilities. Typically developing peers are invited into the program, and they serve as role models for our students. And so we have several different types of classes in the preschool. We have fully integrated classes where the entire day, typical peers and students with IEPs spend together. We have classes that are split half and half, where half of the day there's integration, and the other half of the day students with disabilities get more significant service, and that's in small groups, and so that's without peers. We also have a classroom where there's limited windows of time for integration, and that's because the needs of those students are so large. Most of their day is spent in small group, working on services. The preschool also offers speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, as well as vision and hearing services as needed. I think that's a quick synopsis of the preschool program. So moving on to the K-12 programs, I'm going to start by talking about inclusion. And I know that's not typically considered a program per se, but I think it's important to talk about. And this occurs at all of our buildings and captures the majority of the students on IEPs. So a majority of students, their needs are mild, and support can, for the most part, take place in the general ed curriculum and the general ed setting. This is delivered by special ed teachers and paraprofessionals who provide support as outlined on the IEPs. And again, all buildings are supplied with the ability to provide speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, hearing and vision as needed. So the more traditional in-district programs that we typically talk about when we're talking about, whether it's budget or on this night, we have a small number of students who have such needs that require service and support outside of the general ed classroom for larger portions of the day. And so the district has built programs that are designed specifically to meet these needs. Certain buildings in our district house certain programs, and I'm going to get into that over the next several slides. Unfortunately, the downside of this is that we can't build every program in every building. I would love to do that. It's just not feasible to do that. And so we select buildings to house our programs for the district at that level. Fortunately, with the prospect of our new middle school, less students will be impacted by not being in their neighborhood school. So right now, there are instances where kids need to leave their neighborhood schools to access the program and the services that they need. Once the middle school is built, we'll have fewer students who that's impacted by, and it'll just be at the elementary level where students are leaving their neighborhood school. So there are really three cohorts of students that the program services, and I'm going to introduce you to those different cohorts and give you the likely path that these students would go through through our programs throughout the district. So the first cohort are students with moderate to possibly severe disabilities in multiple areas. This usually impacts cognition, academics, and these students likely have the related services that I talked about, speech, OT, PT. Oftentimes in these programs, students have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. These are the programs where students with that typically end. Core academics are taught outside of the general ed setting, usually between 2 and 3 hours a day. The rest of the day, students are included, specials, lunch, recess, possibly other activities going on in the gen ed classroom. These students are on a diploma track, so they take standard MCAS, usually with a number of different accommodations to support their disability to be able to take the test. And this is their track, the typical track through the district. Not every student does this, and of course, circumstances change with each individual student, but for the most part, students move through the programs in this fashion. At the elementary level, this program's housed, it's called the District Learning Program, and it's at the Fisher Elementary School. When students age out of that building, they move into Byrd Middle School in the Cooperative Learning Program. And typically when students end in that program, they move into the Essentials program at the high school. And each one of those programs operates roughly in the way that I described, the 2 to 3 hours of service pullout and then the rest of inclusion. And so with each cohort, the services are going to run roughly the same at the 3 levels. Cohort 2, these are students with severe and more global disabilities. These students have very limited verbal ability or are maybe nonverbal. They have significant adaptive or life skill needs. And these are the students that really have the most significant needs in the district. Most of their instruction is going to take place in a small group, low staff-to-student ratio setting. These students typically take alternative MCAS. So in their case, diploma track is not really feasible. And so they take alternative MCAS as an alternative. We do look at targeted inclusion opportunities for these students with significant support. Oftentimes those are specials and lunch and in recess. And so you see the three levels down below. At elementary, this program is housed at the Boyden Middle School, called the Varied Instructional Program. At the middle school, it goes by the same name at Johnson Middle School. And in the high school, it's called the Career and Ed Program, Tiers 1 and 2. Tier 1 are for students who are in 9th to 12th grade. That program is more academically focused. Tier 2 is for students who are 18 to 22 years of age. And that program is more vocationally and adaptively focused, where students learn to navigate the community with independence. They may do some jobs, supported jobs in the community. Oftentimes, we have students come here to Town Hall and they do some work around our office. So it's an opportunity for us to see the kids on a regular basis, which is fantastic. All right, so the third cohort, these are students with a primary disability of social emotional functioning. So these are students where behavior and mental health needs come into play. Service in this program is a little more flexible than the other two. We try as much as we can to maximize service in the gen ed setting for these students. But the programs can be flexible to provide more time in a pull-out setting if needed. All students are followed by a clinical social worker. At the elementary level, this program is housed at the Elm Street Elementary School. When students leave there, they move to middle school at the Johnson Middle School Partnership Program, and then on to the high school where the partnership program is also located. So that's really a synopsis of the three kind of core groups that the program service through the district. And I assume we'll do questions at the end if you have any. Okay. So we're going to move on to professional development. I'll tell you that the large professional development endeavor that we took on this year was the introduction of a research-based reading program to support students with reading-based disabilities called Linda Mood Bell. And this was really the outgrowth of some teacher feedback that we got. From what we were hearing from special ed teachers is that they felt really good about the service that they could provide in the gen ed setting. They felt good about the number of staff and the ability to provide really significant reading services using the Wilson Structured Reading Program. They felt like they didn't have anything really in between. So a number of staff members, building leadership, team chairs, elementary principals, put a lot of research and a lot of feelers out to the staff, a lot of conversations were had about what can we obtain that's going to allow teachers a tool for something in between these two programs. And Linda Mood Bell was the option that was chosen. So in the beginning of the school year, we needed to train the teachers, and so every Wednesday for the first 6 weeks of school, for the entire afternoon, teachers trained on the Linda Mood Bell program. So now we're off and running with the program. I'm getting positive feedback, but again, it is early. We've only had it for a few months. But in our team chairs meeting, we are already talking about extending this training to the middle school level. So that's our hope, either for spring or at worst next fall. Some other ongoing activities in terms of professional development. We do have a year-long training for 2 of our staff members to obtain Wilson certification. So whenever we can add staff with that certification, it's great and a benefit to the students. We have monthly meetings for our psychologists with a clinical neuropsychologist, and this is largely case consultation and almost functions like a rounds for our psychologists in the district. Speech therapists meet on a regular basis for case consults and to talk about new information going on in their industry. Program staff meet on a regular basis, and this would be kind of the programs that I talked about before, the VIP staff, the CLC staff. Teachers and paraprofessionals meet on a regular basis to review the kids' progress and what tinkering they might need to do in the program. And then the team chairs in the district meet on a regular basis, and I lead that group, usually twice a month. So pivoting to the middle school review. This is something that we're very happy that we've been able to return to this year. I think the last 2 years, we haven't been able to review any of our special ed programs, given the circumstances. But we're able to get back to it this year. And we're focused on the middle school. This was a discussion that Dr. Goff and I had, and made the decision that this is the level we want to look at, for a number of reasons. Including this is the one level since I started here that we've not looked at. We've looked at the preschool, we've looked at certain elementary school programs, we did a comprehensive review of the high school. So the middle school is one area that I hadn't had someone come in and review for me. So we have 2 auditors who've come in, and we've contracted their services to come do this for us. And Dr. Goff and I asked them to really focus their attention on the inclusion-based services. This was something we really wanted to look at. We posed some questions to the auditors and asked them to really review that. Of course, the programs are also going to be looked at, and so they're doing that as well. And so I would anticipate a report that looks fairly similar to the one we got regarding the high school several years ago. So as I mentioned, we had 2 auditors who came in, and this was done, the bulk of this work was done last week. So they spent Monday through Thursday in the building. Their intent was to be here Friday, but I know the ice storm changed that plan. So we are working with them to bring them back to finish the work that they had done last week. They were in observing classrooms. They conducted interviews of both staffs, Johnson and Byrd, but not just the middle school staffs. I got a chance to provide input. Dr. Goff, Mr. Hahn got a chance to interview and provide input. And representatives from the elementary feeder schools are also going to be interviewed. That's what was scheduled for Friday. They're going to be interviewed to provide their feedback as well. And the auditors also reviewed special education demographic data that we provided for them. So we're anticipating a report in the coming weeks, once everything's wrapped up and they've been able to kind of compare notes and get their report together. And you know, we're very excited about the outcome. I know the staffs in both schools are very excited to have the auditors there, and they feel like it's going to be a very beneficial thing for their 2 buildings, particularly as we move into a phase where we're going to be combining buildings. So. All right, so these are the slides that I added this morning. And so what I wanted to tell you is that each year, DESE provides all districts in the state with an update on various indicators of success for students with disabilities. So Dr. Goff and I received this update on Tuesday. So I added these slides into the presentation. So the indicators of success that DESE comments on, there are a number of them. I've listed a few of them here. And they include graduation rate. And again, this is all students with disabilities. Graduation rate, dropout rate, inclusion rate. So what percentage of our IEPs are full inclusion? Disability rates for students of color. Are students of color overrepresented in special ed? Are they overrepresented in certain disability categories? And discipline rates. Again, are students of color overrepresented in our discipline rates? So all districts are categorized into 4 groups based on their need for intervention. And I'm happy to say that Walpole is placed in the highest category, meeting requirements. There are no areas of concern and no interventions needed per DESE. And so I look at this as a truly collective accomplishment. I don't see this as just a special ed accomplishment. It's a general ed, special ed, anyone who's really connected with the building is accomplishment. So I did share this with some of the groups that I talked to during the week, and I think it's something that everyone walked away with being really proud of. So that's the extent of the update that I have for you. I can certainly answer questions if there are any.
Dr. Goff, do you have anything further?
No, I just want to commend Dr. Cooley for obviously his hard work with this, and then also just the hard work with these programs, because what it does is it it enables our students to have more inclusive practices and keeps our students in district and in their neighborhood where, you know, where we want them. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Questions for Dr. Quealy from the committee? Ms. Syrick?
I want to say thank you, Dr. Quealy. I mean, obviously, I think some of us knew about this before, but then you joined school committee and you're like, oh, wow, we do all these things. So I appreciate you taking the time to update the viewing public. And I also wanted to say thank you, and I'm happy to hear, obviously, about all the reading support that's happening. As you know, my son is a benefit of the Wilson Reading Program, so I'm happy to hear that you're adding tutors there or adding trained teachers. And I think the Linda Mood Bell is also a really good addition, especially as we've added the screening, the literacy screening. I think that will help, you know, with foundations, and then Linda Mood Bell. I think that's a really good stepping stone for when we do see more of those kids come in. So thank you for adding those.
Pleasure.
Other questions, Ms. Denizio and then Mrs. Gallivan?
I was curious, with the 2 new staff trained in Wilson, what does that bring the total to for staff trained in Wilson, if you know? And are they spread out among the various buildings?
They are spread out among the buildings. I would have to check the total number. We do have 1 or 2 who are retired teachers who come back, so I don't know if we count them as full folks.
Right.
So I could certainly find a number for you. These folks aren't trained yet. They'll be trained by the end of the year.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And the other thing I just wanted to say is I think it's excellent that Walpole rated the way that it did in that DESI report. I can't imagine there are a lot of districts that have no interventions required. That's part of the reason why special ed is identified as a subgroup for DESI when we track all of our metrics, right? Because we know that very often there are problems with respect to all of the indicators that you listed out. So I think it's a really tremendous accomplishment, and want to say congratulations to you and the staff.
Thank you. I will pass that along.
Other questions, Mrs. Gallivan?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you also for the comprehensive presentation. The law requires us to provide for students in the least restrictive environment, and I think it's amazing that you have the in-district programs, because least restrictive environment is like legal terms, but what that means is in their home, with their neighbors, where they live, and I think that that's a huge accomplishment. I'm also really glad to hear the priority on inclusion and mental health. I think those are 2 areas that all students benefit from. And I think that, I think you're doing a great job with that. I have 4 kids who have all gone through the school system, and I think we learn each year. My youngest had the best experience because I think we learn as we go. And being in a co-taught class at Fisher School was one of her highlights. And, you know, I think the work that we're asking special ed teachers to do is the kind of work that not everybody is capable of doing. So, you know, we're glad to have you here, and please extend our thanks to your staff, because they're doing some amazing work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Further questions or comments from the Committee on Special Ed? I know, Dr. Quealy, we did have a special ed subcommittee meeting last week, which I think the core and root of which we've reported on here today. I liked, as Ms. Denizio said, our flawless DESI report. I think, obviously, this body has taken especially retention at the high school level very seriously. We have part of our budget proposal with an additional half-time staff person for credit retention at the high school. So I think, as Mrs. Gallivan said, we're working more closely in a district with overlapping areas of kind of professional practice. So we obviously trust that if that position becomes available, that they'll work closely with your staff at the high school level to kind of integrate their efforts as well. But again, our report in that area was quite good compared to state averages, so we were excited for that. Anything further on this? Any? Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Quealy. Our next order of business is the superintendent report. The superintendent report is pretty completely
COVID-related.
COVID-related, so we will
If
we'll
you
move
don't
from
mind,
that.
could I get into COVID?
Yeah, we'll move from
and then I
that
can
to
talk
old business.
the superintendent's report after. if
Excellent,
that's
very
okay with
good.
you. All right.
Dr. Goff.
Thank you. So last week, I just wanted to report, we had 76 positive cases at Walpole Public Schools, which is a significant decline. As of this morning for the week, approximately total positive cases is 33. In terms of the Walpole Health Department, as anticipated, Walpole's positivity rate continues to decline. The positivity rate for the most recent reporting period is 10%. This is a significant decrease. If you remember 2 weeks ago, when we were here, it was a little over 20%. And we anticipate these numbers will continue to decline. Before I go any further, I just want to give it to Kathy Garvin, who's going to give a little bit of an update about the at-home testing option.
Thank you, Dr. Goff.
Ms. Garvin, thank you.
And then she'll be back to
Thank you, Chairman Buckley. As you know, we transitioned last week from our test and stay program. Thursday was our last day of contact tracing, and Friday was our last day to test those students who are identified as close contacts in the school setting. Beginning on this past Monday, we transitioned to symptomatic testing, which is a continuation since September for all those students who present at the health offices and have symptoms, and began our weekly home testing program. I queried the principals, and on Monday and Tuesday, 796 kits were sent home to students. The students were tested on Tuesday, and we're hopeful that all the home testing kits are being used each week. DESE's changed one guideline for the home tests. Initially, they said they did not want the test kits used for symptomatic testing. Many individuals asked them to reconsider, and they did. I heard on a webinar yesterday with DESE that if a student tests negative on their regular day and then becomes symptomatic later during the week, they can use the second test kit to check their child for COVID, which is a great use, I think, of the kit. The parent can then reach out to the school to explain that the second test kit's been used, and they can receive another kit for the next week. Families are going to use the second test that they received in their kit next week. They'll also then receive another kit with 2 more tests. DESE is encouraging families to use a test during the school break. Families would then use that second test from that kit when we return on Monday the 28th. They'll continue to receive a test kit with 2 tests every 2 weeks. The program's currently scheduled to run through April 22nd. Parents can opt in at any time. In addition, if their child does test positive, they can opt out for the remainder of the program. It's not necessary to test within 90 days of an infection. And almost 250 staff have signed up for the home testing program as well. Our symptomatic testing, as I noted 2 weeks ago, we are seeing about a 50% rate of all students who come into the health office with COVID symptoms are testing positive. And that's been since about probably just before holiday break. And I'm assuming that we'll start to see those numbers decline as well. And I think that's it. I'm gonna
Thanks,
talk about
Kathy,
the
appreciate it.
vaccine
Ms.
clinic.
Garvin.
Just to continue, the Walpole Health Department is offering another COVID clinic for ages 5 to 11. That's this Saturday from 10 to 12 at the former Walpole Police Station, the Old Town Hall in Walpole. And the principal sent all that information out last week. Mary sent it out this week. I'll send it out in my notes next week, so you'll have that. Okay, as many of you are aware, we all know this is like old news, even though it happened just recently. After consulting with medical experts and state health officials, Commissioner Riley stated that effective Monday, February 28th, the DESE mask requirement will be lifted statewide. The Commonwealth's high vaccination rates and widespread availability of COVID testing for school personnel and students support this decision. It's also important for students and staff to continue to follow the DESE and DPH protocols for responding to COVID-19 scenarios. We will make sure to publish any update to these protocols. I consulted with Melissa Ranieri, the Health Department Director, and Walpole Public School District Nurse Leader Kathy Garvin. Decisions being made over the past 2 years were never taken lightly, and much thought, discussion, and consideration has been put into every decision. I'm grateful for the collaboration and hard work of both the nursing department and the health department. Together, We are all in agreement and make the recommendation to school committee to vote tonight to rescind the mask policy on the 28th. What is different? We have weathered the surge that began back in November. Vaccination rates are rising, and we will continue to offer clinics like the one this weekend. Therapeutic treatments have improved. We are in a different place, and the context is that the states are unmasking, and now we need to work together to make that possible in our schools. Principals are already planning to get our lunches back to normal routine. We are planning for a normal graduation. We are having prom. It's not realistic to wait until rates get to zero. I think we all can agree on that. As always, any individual who wishes to continue to mask, including those who face higher risk from COVID-19, must be supported in that choice. I just want to repeat this. As always, any individual who wishes to continue to mask, including those who face a higher risk from COVID, must be supported in that choice. Of course, in alignment with the Health Department and DESE, we do recommend that unvaccinated students should continue to wear masks in school settings. Walpole Public Schools will continue with our mitigation strategies. This won't change. Along with DESE and DPH, we continue to urge all eligible individuals to receive the vaccine and booster. We'll continue with vaccination clinics. Other mitigations include participating in our COVID-19 testing program, maintaining good hand hygiene practices, and staying home when sick. As always, masks will be made available to both staff and students. At this time, we are waiting additional guidance from the MIAA regarding masking for sports. Please note, the federal order requiring masks on school buses remains in effect. As such, the school committee does not have that authority to make masks optional on buses. Masks will still be required on our buses until further notice, and masks are also required at this time in any health office. In terms of the high school 80% waiver, the health department is no longer recommending a 3% positivity threshold. They do not feel that this metric is an accurate indicator in determining the positivity rate and transmission in schools. So much has changed over the past 2 months from when this metric was first recommended. As the health department indicates, vaccination rates have increased, testing availability has increased. There has been low transmission rates in school, and case counts have substantially decreased. The health department anticipates cases to drop and therefore project the positivity rate to actually be much closer to 3% by the time the mask requirement expires on the 28th. And by holding off on allowing masks to be removed in school until February 28th, we are allowing our schools enough time to make this transition. Okay, so here goes. Therefore, in addition to the vote, school committee has one of 3 options for the high school, just talking high school. Option 1, if the school committee votes to rescind the mask mandate tonight, effective February 28th, Walpole High School follows this timeline with the option to unmask on the 28th, so that's the Monday after the break. Okay? Option 2, the school committee votes to allow Walpole High School vaccinated students and staff the option to unmask next week. What does this entail? This would mean permission slips would be sent out on Friday, and that data would be collected over the weekend. How to police? Full transparency. It will be difficult to keep track of those individuals to ensure they are wearing their mask at all times. And cases will have to be dealt with by administration on an individual basis. Teachers will not have a list, nor will they police this. They need to focus on teaching and learning. Number 3. Wait for it, there's a number 3. There's 3, gotta wait for it. With the 3% town positivity rate as a metric, the waiver requirements have now been met. Therefore, per DESE, the school committee can vote to allow Walpole High School students and staff the option to unmask next week, 5 school days prior to the 28th. almost done, I promise. I'm almost done, okay? Principal Imbush just wanted to reiterate to the school committee, he said, I just want to quote him, I asked his permission, he said, he said that I could read this. He said, quote, "How huge it would be for these high school students if they were allowed to go mask optional for this coming week. They have been so good about wearing masks. I think it would be a real bonus for them to have this privilege before other schools on February 28th. However, he respects the decision of the school committee." And finally, these past years have been trying for many, and we've endured many setbacks along the way. I can attest to this as I entered this position when the pandemic hit, and I've seen many of my colleagues leave this position prematurely. When the 2021 and 2022 school year started, our main goal was to provide safe, in-person learning for our students. We have worked very hard to achieve this with our COVID mitigation strategies over the past 2 years. Contact tracing, vaccinations, testing, masking, and social distancing. And for that, I am proud of all that we collectively have accomplished. I want to thank every member of the school committee for sticking through this journey. It hasn't been easy for you either. I appreciate your support and listening to my recommendation to follow the DESI guidance and rescind the mask policy on February 28th. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goff. Thank you. As you had said,
After, I'll do my rest of my superintendent report.
excellent, thank you,
after.
Dr. Goff. As you said, obviously, we've had this agenda item on our school committee warrants for about 2 years now. We've discussed this. We proactively sought the DESI waiver in December for the high school, once the high school reached, was it December, November?
Sometimes I don't know what
I
day
know,
it
right?
is anymore.
December, November?
I
once
think
we
it
reached-
was, yeah, we reached it fairly
Fairly,
quickly.
pretty
And
quickly in
it
December.
took time to get the waiver approved, and then, but we had to consult with our health department.
Thank you. So we sought that waiver. We obviously had a dialogue about that, as we have most meetings. So this has been a very deliberative process. I know myself, at the very least, I really appreciate the strong partnership between Melissa Ranieri and Ms. Nurse Manager Garvin and all your staff, who've been on top of all the normal things they do, like cuts and bruises and EpiPens and glucose shots and things of that nature, have endured and delivered on test and stay as well. So I think we take your recommendation quite seriously, knowing that it was highly deliberative, as you have done throughout those last 2 years of COVID. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, comments from the committee. Chair will recognize Mr. Breen.
I'd like to make a motion to rescind the mask policy effective February 28th, with the exception of the high school that could go mask-free next week.
Second by Ms. Gayotzis. Discussion. Mrs. Gallivan.
I think we all know we're very, very tired of the pandemic, and I'd like to say I'm really proud of how Walpole has handled it in general. I think the amount of cooperation and collaboration and extraordinary support that Mr. Imbush was just talking about is something that makes our community really special. I'm appreciative of having taken the time to hear from some of the people whose guidance and concerns matter the most to me. And there are very few decisions in this life that are 100% crystal clear. I think this is an example of one of them by far. It can be viewed from many angles, and I would just ask all of us to approach our reaction to tonight's decision, as well as any future possible decisions that we still have to make, with the same collegiality and sportsmanship that has caused Walpole to be proud during many challenging times. If you're a person who's advocating for the continuation of masks, please recognize that we have to be grateful to the immense cooperation that we've received from people who did not believe that this was necessary for their child. And if you're advocating for the removal of masks, please be aware that for a family with a newborn at home, a parent undergoing chemotherapy, or anyone else with a compromised immune system, this decision may be challenging, could be challenging for their family. And I would hope that we all recognize that our children are good at reading our cues, and that our messages say things that are positive. It would be scary for a child to hear masks don't do anything, if their family has a compromised situation. A better approach would be to say that we as parents don't believe you need to wear a mask any longer to be safe, and the district is giving us that choice. But others may feel differently, and that's okay. An approach like this is the kind that will align us with the way that Walpole has chosen to handle the last 2 years, and will prove to be one that we can all be proud of. I would just note a couple of things. The CDC does still say that a well-fitted mask over your mouth and nose is effective if you need that level of protection. It's also not accurate to say that all restrictions have been removed. I was at the Boston Garden on Saturday night. I needed to bring my vaccination card or prove that I was vaccinated, and had to wear masks. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction, and I think that this is a good thing. I just hope that we can come out of this as a strong community.
Thank you, Mrs. Gallivan. Further questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Denizio?
I just have some clarifying questions, if
Please
that's
do.
okay. I want to start with Nurse Garvin. So I would just want to make sure I'm clear on the test kit distribution schedule, because it sounded like we were going to be getting a little ahead of it with the break. So I know the kits went home Monday for this past Tuesday and next Tuesday. And then when are the students getting
You'll
theirs?
so Desi is gonna send out kits for both staff and students to arrive so that everyone gets a kit before February break, so that they stay on the same schedule.
And so the recommendation is to use that kit the same way, so to test the Tuesday during the break
Yes.
and Tuesday, March 1st?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. And the quarantine guidelines have not changed at all, correct? So if
No,
a s-
they have not, and
so-
that would be one situation where the mask is not allowed to be removed from days 6 through 10. Even though the quarantine's been shortened, as I've mentioned before, people are still considered contagious through day 10. Less likely if you have no symptoms, which is why the quarantine was shortened. Folks who still have some symptoms are still likely able to transmit the virus. So anyone, and on the DESE guidelines, if you come out of quarantine because you've been positive, days 6 through 10, you must continue to mask. In our discussions, Dr. Goff and I discussed the possibility, if a family was not comfortable with that the other option has always been to be able to stay home in quarantine for the full 10 days, and that would be an excused absence. Folks who are in close contact to, we're not doing it at school, but if you're a household member and you're considered a close contact and you must quarantine, then those folks also must wear a mask from days 6 through 10, because they are still possibly able to develop and transmit the virus. So that is one case. On the webinar, they stressed that the ruling is not so much no masks, but less masks. So there are still some situations. The buses, health offices, because they're considered a health office, similar to when you walk into your doctor's office, and these situations when someone's been positive or a close contact.
Okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, a student or a staff member tests positive, they are out of school for 5 days. Day 6, they can return, but must be masked, that is required?
That is required.
And the alternative to that would be to just continue to stay home until?
Right.
Okay,
If they
thank
prefer
you.
not to wear a mask, they can
Okay.
stay home in quarantine.
Thank you for clarifying that. Another question, usually, Dr. Goff, in your COVID update, you give us updated vaccination rates for all the schools?
I got that, would you like it?
Sure, yeah,
High school's at 86,
yeah?
the middle schools are at 68, and the elementary schools vary from anywhere from like 50 to 62%, but
Okay.
that's not including, they haven't included staff in some of that, so it's most likely higher.
Okay.
But we're, as after this round of boosters, then we'll be able to get that.
The reason that I asked that question is because if we do, amend our policy to be in line with what the state mandate removal, I just wanted to make sure that we were still gonna present the vaccination rates, because I think if it does become a family's choice, families might be very interested in knowing
absolutely.
what the vaccination rates are in their children's building, and that might influence their choice.
And I can
So-
have the principals
Okay.
give that information.
Last question. We've had pretty consistent spikes in the number of cases in school immediately following a school vacation, going back all the way to Thanksgiving 2020. February 28th is the very first day back from February vacation. So I'm wondering if we have concern that we would be unmasking at the same time of us as a potential spike.
No, actually, because that was part of what we consulted the health department and then also Kathy. I mean, there's always a chance for anything, right? And if the commissioner and Desi, they, anytime if we hit a spike, we call Desi, we talk it over, and then make those recommendations from there. Continue to work with the health department.
Okay.
But not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, Ms. Denizio? Seeing none. Anybody else? Mr. Ahern?
So the vote would totally remove the policy from the policy manual? Is that what we're doing?
Would rescind the.
Or
it would
we
rescind-
edit-
It would
Yeah.
rescind that, right. So it's actually, I believe with Mark's motion, it's like, almost like it's the two votes, right?
Correct.
I don't know if they have to be done separately, if they can be done together. I have no idea. That's true.
Mark, you want to break it up?
Nope.
Okay, fair enough then. Excellent.
You seconded.
Can you
right?
clarify the motion?
Yeah, Mark, could you restate your motion?
Sure. Well, I'll paraphrase. I'd like to make a motion to rescind the mask policy on February 28th, with the exception of the high school, where it will be rescinded as of this coming Monday.
Excellent. Excellent. Further questions, Mr. Ahern? Mr. Ahern, you still have the floor?
Yeah, so when you mentioned mitigation measures were going to still stay in place, prior to that, you mentioned that cafeterias and lunches were going to return to normal. Kind of, I guess, what's the remaining balance of things that are being done in school
For the
versus?
high school,
Yeah,
since they would be first.
yeah.
They've already started it. They actually have 3 different areas right now because the students like it. They actually have started to bring the tables already. They're back in the lunchroom. They have places outside, and they're still using the classrooms because some students like to eat there. So it's actually nice because it's giving students choice. So they can, and Mr. Imbush is confident that he can put everything in place on Monday.
And within the buildings, there was a lot of work done to prepare way back when for students to return, and we've been doing air filters and replacing them, and all of that still remains in, like the air circulation strategies.
Yes, we actually had a request for HEPA filter yesterday, and it was delivered to the school, so.
Okay.
we still-
So in addition to that, there's still filtering going on in some select locations?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. Further questions, Mrs. Gaotitz?
I just wanted to say that I support the removing of the masks at the high school for everybody. I had concerns, as I stated last week, about, and it was, as you presented an option to, we don't need to be policing this. So I think going with that third option, as Mark has made the motion, is really the way to do it. They deserve, they got to the 80% vaccination rate. That was the carrot we dangled to get people to vaccinate their kids at the high school. And I think they deserve the reward and to be done with it.
Thank you.
Further questions from the committee? Further comments from the committee? We have a motion and a second. The chair will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 700. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Our next order of business is a middle school building project update. Actually, Dr. Goff, do you want to keep going with your superintendent's report?
I don't know, the mask is gonna clear, or are we just gonna?
Let's keep going.
Okay.
Everybody could quiet down. We still have other business at the meeting. If you could, thank you. If we could all quiet down, we still have other business at the meeting. Thank you very much. Dr. Goff, continue with your superintendent's report.
Sure. Just to let know that, Carrie, I believe you had asked for COVID-related costs. So in your packets is an itemized list from Mike Frisha in terms of the COVID-related costs, through grants, ESSER funding. So if you have any further questions, Mr. Frisha said, please do not hesitate to reach out to him. In terms of strategic plan, just a reminder to school committee that we're having strategic planning on March 8th. And that is to review the district's projects towards achieving our goals, our objectives, and our action steps that are outlined in the plan. So we'll send that out again, so you will have that information. And then finally, I just wanted to give a reminder for snow days that I want to get this out. So as you know, the superintendent of schools, yay, is ultimately responsible for the final decision to cancel school based on various weather-related factors and information from the Department of Public Works. Just a reminder, in the event of a school cancellation or delayed opening, a recorded phone message is sent to each family's primary phone contact. It's broadcasted through, the news, Twitter. It's posted on WPS website, and an email is also sent through Mary, through all the families. Although our students are better served by being in school, our top priority is safety. I realize that the decision to open or close schools in bad weather has a major impact on families. If it is absolutely clear that we are going to get the jackpot or the ice pot, in this case, the last week, schools will be canceled the night before. On the other hand, if there is a chance that we might be able to have school the next day, the final decision has to wait until morning. As much as I try to avoid rising at 3:45 in the morning, it is the most responsible way to make the decision. Please remember that DESE will not allow any district-wide remote learning days to replace a snow day, and therefore any snow days need to be made up in June. So sometimes I get emails asking, like personal emails asking me if they think there'll be school next day. So my answer is always that you will know when everybody else knows. So that's it. That's it. Mr.
Thank you very
Buckman.
much.
I know there's one teacher in the district that's gonna know. in advance.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
That's fair enough.
We're
fair
just
enough.
grateful you don't call us at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we have,
Is the vote, like, babies all the way up to the big kids?
that's
Oh.
preschool, correct.
Yeah, you
Yes.
rescinded it.
We rescinded that for the district. Yes, correct.
No, it's rescinded, the whole
We rescinded our
policy.
policy. Thank you. Excellent, wonderful. Moving on, middle school building project. Chairman Breen, would you like to give us an update? Maybe wait a minute for everybody to
pause
mill
a
out. Thanks, buddy. We would ask if you would like to speak to go out into the hallway to do so.
Okay, Mr. Green. Mr. Green knows how to clear a room.
Mr. Breen knows how to clear a room. Almost as good as I do. Please,
Do it 5 times a day in school.
5 times a day.
Oh, let me need that.
Yeah, you're up.
I'm just going to start. So we have a building committee meeting this Tuesday. So the latest seems to be, a lot of people have probably, hopefully seen the image of the building on the school website or the town website. We're starting to add color to it. Like, what are the external color possibilities? What are the internal color possibilities? So it starts to look real. That's really the color and the materials, and texture is important. And quality of the materials and so forth seem to be the conversation these days. And I would encourage people to pay attention to watch the school building committee meeting Tuesday for more information. But it's starting to take, like, you feel like you can touch it now when you see it in color, so.
Dr. Goff.
No, Mark, to your point, that it is exciting to see everything start coming together, but we are going to have a community forum in March, and.
March 9th, I think.
March 9th,
Yep.
it's a Wednesday. So I asked, you were at the meeting today, Compass and Tape, they're going to work on a flyer, so we should be able to get that flyer out. I asked them if we could get it out next week, because my concern is that, once vacation hits, it doesn't give families enough time, enough notice, so.
So, but I don't think it's gonna be a town-wide flyer. I think it's
No.
just gonna be through the schools.
Yeah, and we'll put it, we'll
Because of-
tweet
just
it
because
out,
of
we'll
the
get
cost.
everything out, yeah.
Yeah.
In the town page, because they're gonna have some nice graphics, and it's all coming
And is
together.
the intention that it's going to be in person, or is it virtual, or do you not know?
That's a good question.
it's virtual.
That's virtual.
They think it might hit more people. But we'll see, what they want to do.
All right. Anything else on? Mr. Ahern?
I just wonder if the school building committee has kind of like a list of things that they're covering in upcoming meetings, kind of like how there was certain points that were being checked in the spring and summer ahead of submitting everything. Like if people were interested in a certain aspect of the project to tune in and hear about that, or to know when to update.
I don't think the calendar is that precise very far in advance.
Okay.
I'm sure TAP A and Compass sort of know what will be on the calendar, you know, in the meeting 2 weeks henceforth. But, and they could probably even know what would typically be on a calendar 6 months from now, because they've been through this many times. But they don't put that calendar information out any more than a couple of weeks in advance, so.
Thanks.
Further, I know Ms. Gales, this is all over the colors. She's very deeply involved in that.
G and I disagree over the colors, though.
Oh, boy, this will be good. No lime green, all right? Excellent. Anything further on middle school building project?
No.
Subcommittee activity, we did have a pretty robust discussion about special ed. We did have a special ed subcommittee meeting last week. When was that? Tuesday?
Yes.
That was pretty,
last week, I think?
last week, Tuesday, Wednesday. That was pretty well covered. Anything further? Mrs. Gallivan, do you want to speak about?
Yeah, the legislative
breakfast
breakfast
with
last
Jack?
Friday was excellent. It was all virtual, so the storm didn't get in the way. And I think at the height, there were 71 people there, something like that. Excuse me. So it was excellent. There were more legislators than I've ever seen, but again, the virtual piece helped a lot. Liz McGonigal, who's the executive director at Tech, did tape the whole meeting. I felt it was 2 hours really, really, really well spent. Carrie was able to join us, Bridget was there, and the topics were really diverse. The superintendent from Framingham talked about a grant that they received, a health grant. We heard an awful lot from the Senate President, Karen Spilka. She spent a lot of time there. She used to be a school committee member, so her heart is, you know, in that field, although she has many more responsibilities now. Then we heard from the joint chairs of the Committee for Education, so Senator Lewis and Representative Peisch, who was also a school committee member, and a tech board member, so that was great. Then there was, Tech does this Data Privacy Alliance, so for people that don't know, Tech is the collaborative that we belong to. We work with 16 other towns nearby, because some things are better done on a regional basis, and one of the things that people were finding is that as we were using more and more computer programs and applications, you want to be sure that students' data is not out there for grabs for commercial use, essentially. So the districts asked Tech to organize, and they've been very successful. They have, I think she said, 297 districts in the New England area now participate in this alliance, and it's a major administrative task. They have their own lawyer working on it, and it takes the responsibility off the individual districts. So that was really helpful and interesting. And then, I forget, what did Kate Lipper, Garabedian, and Jeff Roy talk about?
I think they went over like the Student Opportunity Act,
Okay.
remember? And then taking a look at the funding, the increase in circuit breaker transportation, and, you know, what that increase would look like, and, you know, what kind of track we're on in terms of funding. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was an awful lot of, I happen to love this stuff, because it's what you get when you have really smart people working together, and there were an awful lot of smart people on that call. So if anybody wants to see any of the tape itself or any of the programs, the last one was very interesting. The superintendent from Hopkinton talked about what they're doing to support social emotional learning. And they feel like they've taken it from the basics to a little bit more user-friendly by training their staff who are generally the people that the kids know the best. And so that the staff is well-trained in social emotional learning. It was very interesting. I don't know, from your perspective, Carrie, as a counselor, whether it resonated with you, but I thought the whole morning, the 2 hours was well spent. I really did.
Absolutely. It was a great experience, and I was fortunate to have a snow day that I could actually
Yeah.
participate. And first of all, it hit home how fortunate we are to have so many legislators that have this background in education and have a real passion to fight for things like, the Student Opportunity Act. And the social emotional piece in particular was interesting because of the way that they focused on staff and how not only how you make school buildings welcome, safe environments for students, but how do you make them welcoming, safe, caring environments for the staff? Because if you do it for the staff, it's going to trickle down to the students. And so I thought that was really interesting. And there were, every time you get together with people in different districts, certain little nuggets of ideas get brought up and you think, oh, that's interesting. Maybe that's something we could look into. One example I'm thinking of is that Hopkinton does some self-paced professional development opportunities for staff. And I thought that was really interesting because, we have this professional development calendar where we have certain things being presented on certain days, and whether or not that resonates with a particular staff member on that particular day or fits in with what they're trying to do, we don't always know. But the self-paced model I thought was interesting because one staff member could undertake it on their own and then maybe try it out and kind of spread the word to other staff members who then might, if it's something of interest to them, they can pursue it. So that was an interesting idea, something I've been thinking about a lot, and I just liked hearing the updates on some of the bills they're working on, particularly when it comes to strengthening and diversifying the workforce. We all know that staff shortages are a problem right now, and so they were talking about kind of solidifying the alternative pathways to licensure that came out of the need that arose with the pandemic, and just looking at how can we get more qualified, committed people into the profession, which I thought is really important right now. So, yeah, I would encourage anyone to watch it as well.
Good stuff.
Are you
Anything
going to be
further?
sending around the link?
Sure, I'll be
Yeah,
glad to,
that'd be great.
yeah.
That'd be good.
It's, and, obviously, there's the link to the meeting, there's the presentation that the superintendent from Hopkinton did, and there's some information from 2 of the reps. So it's good, yeah, I'll send it along.
Anything further on that? The other subcommittees met recently. The other subcommittees meeting in the future. So I'm seeing none. Moving on, we now have citizens' comments. If people would like to come down, sit in the chair and just give your name and address.
Good.
Good night. Please, please do.
Yes.
Roll away chair.
I know, I don't like the chairs either.
Seriously.
So, thankfully, we don't need our well-planned written speeches tonight. Just want to say thank you. Thank you all for voting the way you did tonight. Like, I'm gonna feel, is this being recorded?
It is.
Drop my kids off at school without a mask. It's gonna be like so amazing. And kids, don't stop recording, please. But like, when you were talking about special ed, I have a sister with Down syndrome, and I can't even imagine her growing up learning with a face mask on. She's in her 40s now, and she refuses to wear a face mask. Like, she will not put it on. Like, and I just hope that no teacher ever, like, forced it on a child with special needs. Like, I don't know, I just can't. And I just want to say thank you for ending this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Excellent, very good. Seeing none, moving on, Mr. Ahern. Approval of warrants, donations, and minutes.
Yeah, I'd love to make a motion to approve the following expense warrants for the amounts listed in your packet. Warrants number 222031 and 222032.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ahern, second by Mr. Breen. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 600.
I'd also make a motion to approve the following payroll warrant for the amount listed in your packet. That number is 2230PA.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ahern, second by Ms., I'll give it to Denizio this time. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 700. Someone like to take donations?
Yes, I will make a motion to approve the following gifts and donations to Old Post Road School, Boyden School, Bird Middle School, and Fisher School from Bay State Textiles Recycling in the amount of $171. To Boyden School from the Boyden School Pack, Follett Book Order in the amount of $3,421. To Bird Middle School from Helpsy, commission in the amount of $22. To Bird Middle School from Life Touch National School Studios, commission in the amount of $1,334. And to Fisher School from Life Touch National School Studios, commission in the amount of $1,930.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Denizio, second by Ms. Cyrek. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 700. Vice Chair Cyrek, would like to take the minutes.
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to approve the following school committee minutes. From January 27th, the school committee meeting minutes, and from February 2nd, the special education subcommittee meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Cyrek, second by Ms. Denizio. All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, 700. Mr. Breen, would you like to take us home?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We'll see you on March the 3rd.